thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Aaron Porras here with ILTV's Morning Briefing.
While receiving widespread condemnation for his recent executive order suspending visas from 7 Muslim-majority countries, Israel was one of the only countries silent about the move. Neither the President of Israel nor any of the contacted ministers made comments on the issues upon request. Not even opposition parties in the Israeli government made comments of approval or condemnation on what is becoming known to many as President Trump's Muslim ban. Contrary to the moniker, however, nowhere in the language of President Trump's executive order does it call for a ban against Muslims. And indeed, neither are the 7 listed countries the most populous Muslim countries in the world. The executive order signed by President Trump severely restricts immigration from 7 countries that the Department of Homeland Security under President Obama targeted as countries of concern for 120 days, and suspends all refugee admission from Syria indefinitely. The department named the countries of Syria, Sudan, Iraq, Iran, Somalia, Libya, and Yemen in the Visa Waiver Program and Terrorist Prevention Act of 2015, which essentially made travelers going to and holding citizenship from these countries ineligible to come to the United States under any visa program. It was signed into law by President Obama on December 18, 2015, as part of the Omnibus Appropriations Act of fiscal year 2016. While Israeli officials continue to ignore calls for comment on the subject, Prime Minister Netanyahu did, however, tweet strong support for the idea of building a wall along the Mexican border, saying, quote, "President Trump is right. I built a wall along Israel's southern border. It stopped all illegal immigration. Great success, great idea," end quote. European politicians were not the only ones critical of Israel's policy to stay silent on the United States' recent executive order to ban travel from 7 Muslim-majority countries. Ex-Deputy Prime Minister Dan Meridor slammed Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying, quote, "Now that we are the majority in Israel, we should not think of political interests of the moment or how we look in the eyes of the US government, but should be guided by our moral compass," end quote. Around 40 protesters outside the United States Embassy in Tel Aviv echoed these sentiments last night. The protesters were comprised of U.S. immigrants, asylum seekers, and activists, holding signs welcoming refugees in the Jewish state and singing Jewish Hebrew hymns. Togod Omer, a refugee from Sudan who was at the protest, said all over the world refugees are the same, with the same story, the story of fleeing their home and the reasons they flee. The U.S. is a country that leads the world, and what they do can really affect and damage the entire world. He continued saying, "We're an international community of refugees. We are one, and that's why we are here." Jewish Republicans and Jewish organizations are criticizing President Donald Trump over his not mentioning Jews in his statement on Holocaust Remembrance Day. The Republican Jewish Coalition said, quote, "The lack of a direct statement about the suffering of the Jewish people during the Holocaust was an unfortunate omission. We hope, going forward, that he conveys those feelings when speaking about the Holocaust," end quote. Trump also faced criticism from Jewish groups over his temporary ban on the admission of refugees. Churches and religious organizations have been most affected as they handle most refugee resettlements in the United States. Mark Hetfield, president of the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, a Jewish refugee society, said the ban affects a Jewish Iranian man in his late 20s and his middle-aged mother who are waiting to come to America. Last year, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, or HIAS, handled 159 applications by Jews for asylum in the United States, among them 89 Iranians and several Jews from Yemen. Israel's ambassador to Mexico was summoned for a reprimand by the foreign minister following Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's comment in support of President Donald Trump's plan to build a border wall along the United States-Mexican border. Mexico's foreign minister himself summoned Jonathan Peled, showing just how outraged Mexico is over the incident. The two are expected to meet later today. Mexican Jewish community leaders also expressed their outrage over Netanyahu's tweet. Netanyahu tweeted on Saturday that after Israel built a wall along its southern border, it stopped all illegal immigration. Quote, "It was a great success and a great idea," end quote. On Saturday night, Mexico's foreign ministry issued a statement expressing its profound astonishment, rejection, and disappointment over Prime Minister Netanyahu's message on Twitter about the construction of a border wall. The Knesset is expected to pass into law a bill that would ban supporters of anti-Israel boycott movements from entering the country. The proposed legislation would permit Israeli authorities to deny entry visas or residency rights to any foreign national calling for economic, cultural, or academic boycotts of either Israel or the West Bank settlements. The Interior Minister Aryeh Deri, though, would be able to make exemptions on a case-by-case basis. The bill passed its first reading in November by a landslide margin of 42 to 15, with 7 abstentions. Critics have called the bill political persecution and said it seeks to silence a legitimate political protest. Knesset member Roy Folkman of Kulanu, one of the bill's sponsors, rejected the idea, saying the law doesn't cover any individual who ever said something, but that it is aimed mainly at organizations that work against the country.
That's all for now. I'm Aaron Porras, and see you later with our main daily broadcast from Israel at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.